Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are going to talk about YAML templates and Azure DevOps pipelines. I know what you are thinking, we are data engineers here, we are not DevOps engineers. Why do we need to know about YAML files and DevOps pipelines? Well, because it's part of the continuous integration and continuous delivery process on Azure, and as data engineers we need to be able to understand the basics of how the CI/CD process works on Azure, right? By the way, it's not my favorite part of Azure, and I'm not an expert on Azure pipelines by any means, but I found it becomes a lot easier when you understand the basics. First, we are going to see some basic YAML templates triggered by YAML pipelines, and then we are going to use YAML pipelines to deploy the ARM templates we built in the previous video. Also, this time we are going to create two separate pipelines for two separate resource groups and trigger one pipeline only when the first one is completed. Please watch my previous video, it would be a lot easier to follow with the current one, because in this one we won't go into detail of how the ARM template is built. Before we jump into Azure DevOps, let's take a look at some slides first regarding YAML templates and pipelines. These are some definitions of what a YAML template is that I gathered from the web. The YAML templates are templates with parameters that can be inherited by pipelines. This feature is useful to quickly set up new projects and update configuration across multiple pipelines at once. Templates let you define reusable content, logic, and parameters, and reuse the same templates on multiple projects. Or YAML templates allow you to define custom tasks or steps that you can reuse in your YAML template, either for your build or deploy steps. As you can see on this diagram here, we can have common YAML templates used in multiple projects. Of course, in order to do that, we have to structure our YAML templates in order to be able to parameterize them, right? This is the typical structure of a YAML file. A pipeline can have stages, which are the major divisions in a pipeline. Inside the stages, we can have jobs, which are units of work assignments. And inside jobs, we can have steps, which are tasks or scripts or references to other YAML templates. But of course, you can notice the hierarchy here, this nested hierarchy. We have a pipeline that has stages, multiple stages, jobs, multiple jobs, and inside the jobs, we define multiple steps. In our video, we are going to run a step pipeline, a job pipeline, a stage pipeline, and at the end, a pipeline to deploy the ARM template we created in the previous video. For instance, here we have a step pipeline. Inside steps, we have a script which runs an echo command and has a display name. Then we have a task which runs a Python script. The task has a display name as well. And last but not least, we have the inputs where we define our inline Python script and print something. On the right-hand side, you can see the step pipeline. Now, the step pipeline is a YAML file again, which contains the trigger. You can use none in this case, I'm using the master branch. We need to define the pool, which is to specify the VM image. In this case, it's Ubuntu. Then we have steps, as we have in the template. We run an echo command here, but notice we also point to our step template. So it's going to run the echo command, and then it's going to run the steps we have in the template we are referring to. We run another script to echo a few comments after that. So this is going to run the steps sequentially. First, from the step pipeline, we are going to run the echo hello world command. Then we are referring to our template, so it's going to run the steps inside the template we have here. Echo, this is the steps template, and then it's going to run the Python script and print out something. And then it will continue here in the step pipeline and also echo a few other comments. Now, as you can see, sequentially we run the commands. It's pretty easy to understand, right? Moving on to the job template, here we specify a simple parameter that has development as the default value. Apparently, from the job pipeline, we can also pass a parameter. Here, let's say the parameter is environment. We pass the value production as value. So if we do not pass any value in the pipeline, the default value will be used, development in this case, but this is how you pass parameters to a job template. In the job template, we define multiple individual jobs which subsequently run some steps and some tasks. We don't do anything extreme here, we just added one more layer on the step template by adding jobs on top of it. Be careful here because the pipeline has to be at least on the same level with the template. For example, if the pipeline here, instead of jobs, had steps and the template had jobs, you wouldn't be able to run it. It will give you. Then we have the stage template. Again, we add one more layer using stage on top of the job template. We split the jobs. Job 1 now is under stage 1 and job 2 is under stage 2. Respectively, in the pipeline, we use stage to call the stage template. We cannot call it only by using the job template. We define a stage name, we run an empty job, and then we call the template and run all the stages inside the template. We also pass the parameter which will replace the default value. Nothing new, it's very similar to the previous pipeline and template. As you can see, we just add another layer. First we had steps, then jobs, and then on top of it stage. And this is it. That's how it is. You pass the parameters and you are good to go. Now to the most important part, continuous integration and continuous delivery. Continuous integration, CI, is the process used by development teams of automating, merging, and testing code. Continuous delivery, CD, is a process by which code is built, tested, and deployed to one or more test and production environments. But I think most people are very familiar with the CI/CD process. The thing is, how can we configure a CI/CD pipeline in Azure DevOps using YAML files? Let's say we have two JSON files, one containing the ARM template for some resources we want to deploy, and the other one containing the values of the parameters we use in the ARM template. In our pipeline, we use variable groups to pass parameters. I will show you how to do that in a bit. We define the name of the pipeline, then we define the stage, the job, and the task. The structure of this task seems a bit intimidating, but it's provided on Azure documentation, so you don't have to come up with this structure yourself. Don't panic about that. Of course, we need to provide a few parameters: the deployment scope, the Azure Resource Manager connection, the subscription ID, the action, the resource group name, the location, the template location, the file that the JSON file with the ARM template, the parameter file, and the deployment mode. But again, just check the Azure documentation. It provides the whole structure of this task and all the options that you can use. Enough with the slides. I know it's kind of boring, so let's move to Azure DevOps and start building our pipelines. I'm on Azure DevOps right now. The first thing we need to do is create a new folder called templates. You can call it, of course, whatever you like, but I think templates is a very convenient folder name for what we want to do, and define a new file name, step template.yaml. Let me copy and paste the code. This is a YAML template that has only steps. We have the script here that echoes this. This is the steps template, and then we have a Python script that prints out, this is my first Python script. We click commit. So we have the steps template. Now what we have to do is to create a pipeline. We go here, click on pipelines on the blade here, click on create pipeline, click on Azure repos git, click on your project, starter pipeline, because we haven't run anything yet, right? And the first thing we need to do here is actually provide our template. We can do that by do template and we paste our templates slash step template dot YAML. We click on save and run, commit to the master branch, and this, if everything goes well, it's going to run our first pipeline that includes our step template. We are waiting for the agent, run one line script. So here you see hello world, and then it's running the first our template, and then it runs our Python script, and it reads this is my first Python script, and then the rest of the commands that we defined in the pipeline. See how easy it is to actually create a template, and then using a YAML pipeline, you point reference to this template and run these extra steps that you want and make your code reusable. This is actually the point of using a template, right? Let's create the job template now. So underneath the templates folder, create, click new. Let's call it job template.yaml. Let me paste the code. So we have parameters here. We have defined environment as a parameter. We have jobs, and within jobs we have two jobs. One job is called job 1, and inside this job we have steps, which runs a script. This is my first job template, and display name, it has my first job template in the parameter that we have defined here, environment. So you need a dollar, open brackets, open brackets here, double brackets, and then you close the brackets and you refer to the parameter that we have in the parameters section. So parameters.environment. Now the second job, again, it contains some steps. This is my second job template in this, and we're using again this parameter. We run a Python script which prints out this is the Python within a job template. We click on commit, and now what we can do here is instead we can go into Azure Pipelines here. Instead of that, we can click on edit, and we can paste this, which is actually the trigger, the pool that defines the VM image, Ubuntu in this case, and then we have the jobs. So we are referring to the job template, right? So I think it's template now here. And the parameters, we pass the parameter environment, and the value for this parameter is production. So we click on commit. Now if we go to our template, to our pipeline, this is going to run our new pipeline that refers to the job template. You can see here we have job 1 and job 2. It is already running job 2 actually. So as you can see, we printed out, this is my second template, production. So we are missing in production, but okay, that's a typo. This is the value that we provided from the pipeline, because the default value in the template is development. So here, as you can see, we printed out production, which is the value we passed in the pipeline. We run the Python script. This is the Python within a job template. And then we also run job 1. As you can see, this is my first job template in production. Let's create a stage template as well. Back to repos, we click here. Underneath templates, we need to create a new file called stage template.yaml. We are going to paste the code here. We have again the environment parameter. We pass the parameter. Now we have stage 1. that contains job 1, and then stage 2 that contains job 2, right? We click on commit. And again, for our pipeline, we need to actually click on edit, paste the new pipeline, which contains stages. And then inside stages, we have the stage, the job, or it runs an empty job, it doesn't do anything. But we are also referring to the stage template. And we pass this parameter, the environment parameter, and the value is production. So we click on commit, and this automatically is going to run our pipeline. When you click on commit, it's going to run your pipeline automatically. And as you can see, we have here stage 1 and stage 2. I like this graphical interface. And now we are waiting for job 1 to finish. We initialize the job, and it's going to run stage 2 now. Just wait for it. And here we go. Yeah, it runs stage 2 with job 2. Apparently, these are very simple examples. They are not complicated, but I believe simple examples demonstrate how YAML pipelines and YAML templates actually work. The first time I encountered a YAML pipeline, I was intimidated because I was getting frustrated because I didn't understand anything. But when you break it down to smaller pieces and tasks, and you break down, a more complicated YAML pipeline into simple steps, then it's easy to understand what is going on. Back to the pipelines. Now let's delete the pipeline we created. Delete that. We don't need it anymore. Let's create a new folder called dev, and let's create a new file name called dev_pipeline YAML, and that would be our YAML pipeline. Let me copy and paste the pipeline, click commit, so we can save the changes. We have the variable group here, which is called dev, and in this variable group we define this pipeline name parameter. Now, how do you create a variable group? Click on pipelines, click on library, and here you can create variable groups. Click on variable group, provide a name, group name, provide the name of the variable group, test, and then click on add, click on param, let's say, and value. And this is how you create a variable group that contains multiple parameters that then you pass in the YAML pipeline, right? But I'm not going to create a new one because I have already created 2 variable groups. One is for dev. We have the pipeline name here with the value dev pipeline, and one for UAT, which is again the same variable pipeline name and the same value. Now I have those 2 usually. So the example here is to deploy resources. Our template that we created in the previous video in 2 separate resource groups, and when we deploy the ARM template in our dev resource group, then the UAT pipeline is going to be triggered. Once the dev pipeline is completed, the dev pipeline is going to trigger the UAT pipeline when it's completed, and the UAT pipeline is going to deploy the ARM template to the UAT resource group. That's the concept here. Apparently, you don't use resource groups for different environments. You use different subscriptions. So environments usually, if you want a UAT environment, you are going to use a UAT subscription. But for the demo, it's easier, of course, to use resource groups. But the concept is the same, right? So under inside the dev folder. Now we have this YAML file. We define the variable group and we use the pipeline name coming from the value is coming from this variable group, the dev one. We have stages. We provide the name for the stage and the job, and here we have the steps. And underneath we have the task, right? And this is, as we mentioned before, you can find this structure of the task, the structure of this task on Azure DevOps documentation. Now, the next thing we need to do is actually let me upload two JSON files, and that would be our ARM templates from our previous example. Click on commit, and here we have our ARM template. We define our parameters at the top, and inside resources, we define a storage account, a container inside the storage account, a server, and a database hosted on that server, right? And here we have the parameters, JSON files that contains the parameters that we use in our storage.json in our ARM template. And in our YAML pipeline here, you can see we have to define the deployment scope. That would be resource group in our case. We have to define the Azure Resource Management connection, which is, for me, let me click on project settings here. I will show you how to create a service connection. Scroll down, click on service connections, create a new service connection, Azure Resource Manager, click on next, and here you can use a service principal, automatic one, a service principal, a manual one, a managed identity. I use the manual one, and here you have to provide the scope level, the subscription ID, subscription name, service principal ID, service principal key, and the connection name, and grant access permission to all pipelines. I have already done that, and I have created a service connection. And that means now that we have Azure DevOps has the permissions to deploy to Azure portal the resources, right? So Azure DevOps now has access to Azure portal. This is how you create this connection between Azure DevOps and Azure portal. Back to our repo. We have here then the subscription ID that you will find in the Azure portal, action, create or update resource group name. We are going to deploy our ARM template and all those resources inside this resource group test_dev, location West Europe, template location linked artifact, and here in the CSM file, we use the default working directory /dev, which is the folder here, dev/storage.json. So we point to this JSON file here, and the storage.parameters.json, which points to this file here, right? In deployment mode, incremental. Now, let's create, actually, let me delete this folder and this pipeline. We don't need it anymore. And let's go back to pipelines, create a pipeline. And this time, we can click on the Use the Classic Editor, click on Azure Repos Git, continue, click on YAML, click Apply, and we need to provide the YAML file path, and that would be here to this YAML file, the dev pipeline _pipeline. Click on save. We don't want to run it, right? And now we have created a pipeline called with this name, right? ops templates -ci. Now then, let's create a new folder called UAT. Let's call the file name UAT_pipeline and click. Oh, actually that was wrong because I forgot to add the YAML extension. So UAT, let's go again, UAT pipeline.yaml, and let me find the UAT pipeline. Now, exactly with the same concept, we are going to use the variable group UAT that we will pass this dynamic name, and this step is exactly the same. The only difference is it's pointing to the UAT folder here. Let me upload the ARM template as well. And storage, where's the other one? Okay, here we go. Now I uploaded the ARM template and the parameters.json. So here we point to this ARM templates here. So it's exactly the same, different resource group name. This is fine. The different service connection. But the main part that we are interested in right now is this one. So you have to define the resources. Inside, you have to define pipelines. You have to provide the pipeline name. Now that could be whatever you want, because you will be but yeah, of course this name will be used further down the line when you use it, in more complicated pipelines. But here, this is the most important part, the source. The source, that would be, let me change that, that would be -ci, right? And click on commit, and here you will see the trigger branches, the master branch. Now this bit here means that when the pipeline, the dev pipeline, is completed successfully, it will trigger the UAT pipeline, right? This is the most important part here. And the source name has to be the same as this one here, that from the first pipeline that we created. But let's create a new pipeline again for UAT. This time, click on continue, click on YAML. Let's call it, that's fine. Click on the YAML. Click on UAT.yaml, provide the path, click on save. And now we have two pipelines, right? And we are going to run the first pipeline that would trigger the second pipeline. So the dev pipeline will trigger the UAT pipeline. So let's run the dev pipeline and see what happens. So the dev pipeline has to, okay, we have to this to provide permissions to use the variable group. Click on permit here. Permission is granted, and now it's going to run the dev pipeline. The dev pipeline is still running, but as you can see, it created this resource group test dev here, and inside this resource group, it's going to deploy our storage account and our SQL server and our database. Now here, back to Azure DevOps, you can see the pipeline is running. It will take a bit of time because now deploying those resources actually takes a few minutes. But when this one is completed, then the UAT pipeline is going to run. Let's wait. You see, guys, now that the dev pipeline finished, it triggered the UAT pipeline. Now this is going to run. Of course, again, we have to to permit, to grant permissions for the pipeline to use the variable group, and it's going to run our UAT pipeline. Again, it will take a couple of minutes, but as you can see, it says automatically triggered. It was triggered by the dev pipeline. Again, this here, these few lines are the important part. That when you want for a pipeline to run based on another pipeline upon successful completion, then you have to use these few lines here. It's pretty clear once you know what you are doing. Otherwise, it gets very confusing how it works. I have to say that YAML files are a bit fussy with the syntax and all this kind of stuff, but I do honestly believe you can do amazing things. Both pipelines finished successfully, so right now if we go to Azure portal, click on refresh, you will see two new resource groups. One is the test_dev, one is the test_UAT, and these resource groups will contain a new storage account with one container inside the storage account, and an SQL server and an SQL database, the same for inside the test_UAT resource group, exactly the same things. So this is how you deploy resources using YAML files. This is it for today, guys. I hope you learned something new about Azure Pipelines and YAML templates. I'm going to upload on GitHub the templates in case you want to play around, although you can find similar templates on the web. I know Azure Pipelines are not the most interesting thing on Azure, but as data engineers, we need to know the continuous integration, continuous delivery process. We don't have to be an expert, but at least understand how they work and how you can deploy resources and code. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.